I've been really getting a lot of pushback on this, and like kind of understandably so. I get it. Just whenever I say that like 50-50 doesn't really work, like it's not really practical, it's not really good for women. There's always like these, I don't know, like feminist women that come out of the woodworks. Hey, Jace. And start making all sorts of arguments that I believe are just like reinforcing white feminism that we really don't need to be having. And by the way, if you don't follow Jace Mercutio, please do. Jace, if you want to say hi in the chat so people know where to follow you. Jace is raising money for surgery, so please make sure you check out the fundraiser. Please make sure you check out his page. He has so much valuable information, and out of all the content creators here, I have really learned so much from Jace. So thank you, Joes. That's awesome. Hi, Angel. Okay, so I know there's gonna be a lot of pushback. Just hang in there. Let me at least like make the case. Okay. Hi, Aisha. That's awesome. Okay, let's get into it. So every time I come out and say that like 50-50 is not really equal feminism, like it's not really I came on here to gather my thoughts, and now they're not gathering. Okay, hold on. So basically, every time that I point out that 50-50 kind of treats feminism and all of those things, thank you, Lex, as if they exist in a vacuum, people get really up in arms about it. Or like whenever I just say that like 50-50 isn't really fair to women or femmes in general, it's like, it just sets off a bunch of like mostly white feminist women to start arguing about how, a man paying for bills and stuff like that is not equality and it's not feminism. And, how do we address all of these other intersectional issues and da-da-da-da. Like if we open up, basically, the idea is if we open up the Pandora's box of like, there's reparations that need to be paid to women, then like, what all do we do with that? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's kind of the point. Like, the point is that reparations need to be made on a giant, enormous scale in this country because certain people have been disadvantaged for a very long time. And that is kind of the point. The point is to open up that conversation of like, oh, well, other people in America deserve reparations too. And like, what happens when like a white woman dates a black man and stuff like that? And it's like, yeah, those are exactly the kind of things that we're trying to point out by including that piece that all of this does not exist in a vacuum. And even if we really, really wanted it to, exactly, Jace, we can't even talk about equality until we have equity. And you need to understand the difference, right? And so when I say that like a man should pay all of your bills, here are the common arguments that get made. So the number one thing is, that's not equality, that's not feminism, that is not like, that's not really fair, because if we want fairness, then we have to be fair. Well, it just shows, like, making that argument kind of just shows me on top of everything that when you consider like fairness and justice, that you're not really taking in the whole picture, right? Like you're not taking in the fact that men took our rights away. Like men as a whole took women's rights away like hundreds of years ago, and we have had to claw those back out of their hands ourselves. So like men have never like given us rights. Men have never done anything like that. Men have only taken rights away from people on a large scale, right? Not only that, but like women were not allowed in the workforce. Women were not allowed in schools, like for hundreds and hundreds of years. And all of a sudden, now that women are, and they're outperforming men, now men's feelings are hurt. And it's like, oh, that's very interesting, because our feelings were very hurt when we weren't allowed to go to school. Our feelings were hurt when we weren't allowed to have an income, when we had to depend on a man for income and stuff like that. And so when putting all of this kind of stuff in a vacuum is very unhelpful, and ultimately is not like the feminist approach, right? It just, to me, like that doesn't really make sense. Like if you're going to say that you care about like women's rights and women actually succeeding, then you cannot be serious about having the 50-50 conversation as if it's like a feminist, an actually feminist approach to things. Feminists have never advocated for that. Okay, so that's like the first argument, the first most basic argument. We could also add to it that women still don't get paid as much as men, that women have a harder time getting promoted. There's the motherhood penalty, right? There's the fact that a man is putting you at risk of pregnancy when you're not doing that to him. There's all sorts of like examples where we are literally not equal, and men have done absolutely nothing to fix that, right? All the trolls just going off in the comments, like with your little like angry little fingers. Just know that I'm not going to be responding to you. All of your questions will be answered, but you will have to like stick around and be respectful. But I promise all your questions will be answered. I have a lot of things to address, so you're on my live, I'm not on yours. I don't tell you how to run, your life or your social media presence. So let's just, be mutually respectful here, okay? Yep, exactly, Jace. Having a child will stunt your financial prospects and negatively impact your career for life. And you can actually look this up. There's like a graph that goes like, up until a woman has a child, it's on a steady upward trajectory. And then there's a huge dip that it never quite recovers from. So all of those things already make this a non-starter, like in my mind. I'm like, okay, so one of us is putting the other person at risk of a life-threatening, career-ending event. Like, especially if you live in a state where, access to healthcare or access to like even preventative stuff is limited by the fact that it's a red state, and by the fact that other people's religion is being forced on you. Like, you should never be paying 50-50 because a man should feel the weight of that. Because we don't make up for that in any other way as a society. When I would say that maybe 50-50 is okay is when we address all of these like deep structural inequalities, and the fact that we as a society and that we as a country do not give a shit about women, especially about pregnant women, and especially about pregnant women who cannot afford to have a child. And I don't think I need to remind anybody, but maybe I do. Men are responsible for 100% of all pregnancies. Plain and simple. Cis men are responsible for 100% of all unplanned pregnancies, especially ones that like a woman really didn't want. So that is on you. That responsibility is on you. If you want to position yourselves as like leaders and go-getters in this society, but you struggle accepting the most basic responsibility for something that is very clearly your responsibility and your responsibility alone. Like, I don't care for the arguments of like, well, she said she was on birth control. Well, she said this, she said that. Yep. And you still should have taken the proper precautions and not gotten her pregnant if you didn't want to get sued for child support, or if you didn't want to have like, a kid. It's literally that simple. Women are not responsible for pregnancies, men are. Women are responsible for carrying the pregnancies out, which is what makes it, which is like one of the biggest things that muddies up this, entire idea. Let's see, what else is there to cover under the umbrella of like fairness? I mean, okay. So the other part of this is that whenever we, as a collective, talk about like 50-50 isn't really fair because men don't participate in relationships as much as women. Like, men don't bring as much to the table. And again, we're mostly talking about cis men, pretty much like entirely. But, regardless, men are not like expected to bring as much to the table as far as like what actually makes a relationship, the emotional labor, the mental load, the empathy, all that kind of stuff. Men don't really bring that to the table. And so a lot of women are like, no, I'm not paying 50-50 to be with a man like that. Now, a lot of women have come out and said, well, you don't have to date those men. And, when you date those men, it's like you're settling and da-da-da. Okay, well, for one, that is true. But in my opinion, I also still hold fast to the idea that men, even in that case, should still pay for all the bills. And that's mostly because of everything that I mentioned before, in that it wouldn't be fair. So like, just because you can pretend that you live in a vacuum now, and you can pretend like, oh, well, men do just as much like emotional labor and domestic labor and all of that, there's a lot of questions to still ask. Like, are they really doing half of the emotional labor, or do you just say that to make yourself feel better? Like, right? Because we know that a lot of men are not equipped to do these things. So it kind of begs the question of like, well, is he really doing that? It also brings the man's like empathy into question, because even if you as a woman were like, no, it's fine, like I can pay 50% of the bills, and like I want to do that like makes me feel powerful, etc. Like, I think a really empathetic and like understanding and like actually good man would be like, no, I still don't think you should do that, because you have been so historically disadvantaged. And I don't owe you that. But I also know that a woman, just even being in the proximity of a woman, is going to out benefit me so much more than you being in the proximity of a man. Like, that is very different for you. That actually kind of like lowers your quote unquote value in the eyes of society, because you're no longer like an available woman. But it heightens my eyes, or it heightens my value in the eyes of society, because Amber Akilla literally just did a video on this where she said like a woman's cosign is priceless. Like, a lot of men that cheat are married because other women see them as a safer man. Like, you literally even open up your like whoring around opportunities as a man by getting with a woman. So like, it's really in bad faith for men to say that like, I don't see why I should pay for like you get your own money and everything like that. Yeah, well, if you end up marrying this woman and you guys are still going 50-50 or whatever, well, guess what? Over the course of your lifetime as a married man, you're going to make 11% more money than a single man. Even as a divorced man, even if you fuck that relationship up and like you get out of it, you're making 9% more than a single man. So like I said, right then and there, like your proximity to a woman makes you more valuable in the eyes of society, while a woman's proximity to a man usually puts her in jeopardy in all sorts of different ways. Okay, please excuse whatever banging is going on upstairs. I think there's like a maintenance team up there, so. Yeah, married women die younger, all that kind of stuff. And I don't really know, like, once again, of course, we should work on that. But it's like, once I see those stats, then we can talk about going 50-50. Then we can talk about whether that makes sense for us as a society, right? And again, all the people saying, like, oh, so, like, when you're dating, like, this kind of person, and, like, you're dating this kind of person, you're a white woman, like, whatever. That's exactly the conversation that I'm actually trying to unearth. Like, yeah, we do need reparations in this country. Like, it's that simple. But we also, like, I don't want to ignore the fact that, like, black men participate in the subjugation of women, especially black women, as much as white men. So it's a complicated argument, right? And that's why we need to have, like, an actual societal reckoning with it, which is why I'm, like, talking about whether this idea of, like, us jumping as a society, like jumping over all of these, like, steps in the actual process, like us jumping over all of these steps is actually holding our progress back, because we're not having meaningful conversations about what reparations would look like for black people, for women, for Native Americans, for, you know, other historically disadvantaged groups like trans men and women, like gay men and women. Like, all of these groups have historically been disadvantaged. So what would reparations for that look like? What would equality actually look like? What would, you know, that's like a long run project, and we're trying to skip over some of the most, like, key steps of it, if that makes sense, right? Because the other part of it too is, like, this, like, 50-50 feminism is exactly what I would do. And I'm not saying this is what's happening, but this is exactly what I would do if I was the government. And Saint Sean, I agree, but before there were slaves, there was Native people on this land. So there's a lot to unpack, right? So sorry, I'm just, like, bug-eyed at some of the comments in here, because I know it's like, I can always tell when the ratio of men is, like, higher in my live, because I'm like, what the fuck is anybody even saying? Like, I actually cannot comprehend the way that you guys use grammar, and, like, spelling is, like, on a level that is, like, so low it takes me, like, a couple minutes to try and process it. Like, you don't make sense. Like, you're just saying stuff just to say stuff, okay? That's why you're not being responded to. Like, I'm just saying this as a blanket statement. You can stick around, you can listen. If you can make a coherent argument, maybe I'll respond to it. Right now, y'all sound illiterate in the comments, okay? So, like, don't be mad at me for not responding. You're not, like, giving me a proper avenue to respond to you with, okay? So that's, like, part of it. It's like most men come in here and they can't even string a sentence together, but they want to go 50-50 with a woman who probably has, like, several degrees, or, like, you know what I mean? Like, an actual job. I don't know. Like, I don't know what to tell y'all. You're not the prize, you know? Like, in today's society, men are not the prize, and they're not at all as much of a prize to be going, like, 50-50, right? We're skipping over important steps. Women used to be forced to give up so much of themselves, to give up their career, to give up their, like, you know, their independence, right? And they never asked for anything in return. And then here come men, and it's like, oh, well, we gave you your rights. First of all, no, you didn't. So now you have to prove yourself. You have to go to, like, you have to go to work and, like, whatever. And women are like, okay, like this, that's easy. I can do that. That's very easy. That's only 8 hours out of my day. Whereas before, I used to have to work 24/7, unpaid. So that's actually really easy. Is this what you guys were making all this fuss about this whole time? Have you ever tried to birth a child? Because that's a lot harder. And then raise it and then do all that kind of stuff. And men have been awful quiet. And not only that, but in addition to, like, egging women on to, like, prove themselves in the workforce, prove themselves, like, here and there, like, everywhere, men never got on other men's backs about being like, well, yeah, bro, now that she's bringing 50% of her paycheck to the table, or, like, she's covering 50% of the expenses, like, bro, have you gotten any better at, like, decorating a space? Have you gotten any better at, like, picking out curtains? Have you gotten any better about, like, you know, making appointments for the whole family? Do you know what your children are allergic to? Like, are you actually, like, contributing, you know, more of that? Like, men are not, like, checking each other on that. So I'm, like, really getting annoyed with the women that are checking each other on, like, yeah, well, have you thought about this? And have you thought about how this makes it like this? Like, I don't care. I'm literally so done with putting the onus on women to fix society, like, left and right. Like, what do you mean? Like, no, maybe women do deserve to be a fucking succubus for a couple hundred years. Like, how about that? Men have been doing that. Men have been literal parasites to women, forcing women to cohabitate with them and have their children for very meager resources, for literally no reward, only to women's detriment. Like, women were, like, dying in childbirth. Women were, unaliving younger, you know, in general. Women were unaliving themselves. Women were going literally insane and just being put in, like, mental institutions. That's the kind of damage that was done to women on a grand scale. And here we are in the year 2025, forced to sit here and listen to grown men cry about a loneliness epidemic that they fully deserve. You know, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's like, I don't know, this does not seem equitable. This does not seem actually fair. It seems like the kind of thing where, like, somebody's trying to avoid the natural consequences of their actions. And it sounds like, you know, women always getting pulled into it and, like, being made to feel inadequate in order for men to once again receive more than they deserve from a society that is already built for them and has been largely built on excluding women. Like, the society that men brag about building, women, mind you, women who advocate for 50-50 relationships, when men were building society, they built it to keep us out of it. They built it with that in mind. They built it, that was one of the goals of, like, having a society in the first place. So, you know, let's just keep that in mind before we advocate to our detriment for this kind of fairness. Because the other thing that people have been, like, really loving to say is that, oh, but relationships where a man pays all the bills disadvantage women because then you're gonna have, like, nothing, and, like, you're gonna be used to somebody paying all your bills and stuff like that, without literally, like, realizing that the most logical part of this whole thing is that if a woman can go 50-50, that means she has a job. So for a man to be like, so for other women to be like, yeah, this doesn't make sense because like if you give up your like right to earn money, like why do you want a man to like provide for you and like all of that? I never said that you wouldn't be making your own money. If you could go 50-50 in the first place, that means you have a job, and I think you should keep your job. Right? And then the other like ironic part of it is that if you are going 50-50, then you are still setting yourself up for failure as a woman, because then the other argument is that, well, everybody's like too broke to be having these, you know, provider type relationships. Like, where are you guys finding the men that are, you know, paying all of these bills and stuff like that? And like, I don't know, unpopular opinion, but it just seems like if you cannot afford the consequences of your actions as a man, as in like you're living with and dealing with a fertile woman, then you maybe shouldn't be dating. Maybe you can't afford to date. Like maybe you shouldn't have that like leg up in society of a woman paying 50% of your bills. Now, the reason I say that is because I do think it would be better in the long run for our country and our society in general to reckon with that fact, to reckon with the fact of the two-income trap, as Elizabeth Warren calls it, which is that, like I said, basically if I was a capitalist and I needed to like fool people into thinking that a $7 an hour minimum wage is acceptable in the year 2025, where like a jar of pickle costs $7.25, I would just push the narrative that 50-50 relationships are progressive, or that most people are too broke to have a provider type relationship where a woman gets to keep all of her money. That's exactly what I would do. Because my answer to that is like, as a woman, you are infinitely safer living with a female roommate than you know what I mean? Like if you're talking about, oh, well, I'm too broke to be in a relationship otherwise, then like you as a woman also need to get your money up. Like live with a female roommate. Don't put your life and body at risk and your reproductive system at risk. To have a 50-50 relationship with a man who wouldn't be able to afford the other 50% of the bills if you were to become incapacitated by a pregnancy. Like, does that make sense? It's simple and practical. Until the government starts paying women from the moment of like conception, right? Like this is like what's at the heart of like avoiding this, what's at the heart of this like 50-50 thing being really pushed is the fact that it allows our like systems and the powers that be and the government and all the capitalists to avoid reckoning with the fact that they have created an unlivable world on the back of women, on the backs of women and other marginalized groups. So it's like you have created a world that nobody can afford, and now you're gaslighting, once again, you're gaslighting women that they're not a real feminist unless they're going 50-50 with a man, which is crazy. Because you realize that for the powers that be, this kills two birds with one stone. It takes the responsibility, you know, off of men, and it disadvantages women. And it's basically kind of like, what's even the point of women working if they have to split expenses with a man? And it just basically like glosses over the entire reckoning that really needs to happen, which is that a lot of people are holding this society up with their blood, sweat, and tears, and we are not paying them anything for it. And they've been historically disadvantaged for hundreds and hundreds of years. Thank you. And we want to pretend like that never happened. And we want to pretend like we can just, go on and like move forward while we are all being like oppressed financially. And so now we don't have to worry about the financial crisis because we're now telling women that, 50-50 is the healthiest, most progressive, most like badass way to live. And we're not addressing any of the like structural issues that actually make that a very dangerous place for women to be, right? Because again, if you are splitting the bills with a 50-50 man, first of all, that's like a canon event. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but any man who's gonna like demand you to cover 50% of the bills, and like he's not going to take into account like how much y'all are making. He's not going to take into account the fact that like he's not risking his body for pregnancy, that he's not, risking taking years off his life just being in a relationship with you. He's not going to take into account that like most men actually gain years of their life when they enter into relationships with women. Like, if he's not going to take any of that into account, then like that's already not a feminist man. Like, that's a man who doesn't care about women. He just cares about his own pockets. Like, if you're framing this as a feminist issue, but you're letting men off the hook in such a major way, like, I don't know what to tell you. That's not a feminist take. It just isn't. And you're setting yourself up for failure with a man who's going to be like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know if y'all remember that trend back in the day, probably about a year ago now, where some women were like saying to their husband that like, oh, hey, I can't help you with the mortgage this month. And there was such a striking difference in between the people that were doing the trend, who were in these 50-50 relationships, versus the relationships where men were like, yeah, of course I pay all the bills. And it was just striking because it made me realize, like, as a woman, that like that's a dangerous position for you to be in as a woman, seriously. And I don't know what these men were doing with the rest of their money, but it's like, I don't know how that math is not adding up to women. Like, when their man would be like, well, I don't know what you want me to do. I don't know what you want me to do about the, like, you not being able to, I don't have that money. I can't come up with that money. And it's like, oh my God, you don't even pay all of the bills and you don't know how you're going to come up with the money. You're just telling the woman like straight up, like, no, I spent all my money. On what? On what is always my question. Okay. Let's get into the comments. Again, I realize this is like a wildly unpopular take, and I'm okay with that. I don't really care. The people that get it, get it. And if you can see like the bigger picture that is at play here, it's not about like, it's not about this like surface level equality, right? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like saying like, and this is really sad to be saying in the year 2025, but back when like DEI was a thing, it would have been like saying like, oh, well, now we have DEI, so racism doesn't exist. Racism is a thing of the past, right? And it's kind of like saying that to women, like, oh, well, now that women can pay 50% of the bills, gender inequality is a thing of the past. Like, all this kind of stuff is a thing of the past, and you have no right to complain about it. Not to mention, once again, I refuse to have like sympathy for men who have let us fight for our own rights, who have never once come out. You know what I mean? All these women are like bragging on their boyfriends and husbands like, oh, well, he does 50% of the labor and like stuff like that. Okay, First of all, does he do it to your standard or does he do it to his own standard? And then you just deal with it. Like, how easy is it for you to talk to him about things that he did that were like below the standard? Let's hang out. Let's hang out there. You know what I mean? But second of all, it's like you're saying this about the men who just sat idly by while the rights to our bodies got taken away by the government. The men who could have come out with all their GUNs and all of their, like, you know, gusto and said anything to the government about, hey, women should have the rights to their own bodies, especially if we want to keep expecting women to put their bodies at risk for our pleasure. Like, men didn't even care about that. They love it when women are oppressed. And this is why men love 50-50 relationships. This is why you're going to find so many men in the comments defending this, saying that, oh, women are not the prize, and like 50-50 that. Yeah, he's risking his like physical, like, shut the fuck up. You're not risking shit. Point is, you haven't even tried. Yeah, I actually agree with you. All right, let's see. Let me respond. I know there were some women in the comments, so I will respond to the women. Okay, so the mixter, yeah, that might be a man. Okay, but that's a good question. What's the point of women working if they don't pay for anything? First of all, women still pay for things. Women pay for a lot of things. When I say that, like, you know, men pay the bills and stuff, like, there's plenty that you will end up spending on yourself as a woman. There's plenty that you will even end up spending on household stuff. I just don't think that you should be held completely responsible for paying the bills with a man who wants to put your body at risk of pregnancy, with a man who disproportionately will benefit from being in a relationship with a woman. Like, I think you should structure your expenses accordingly to that, right? And so what we say, like in my relationship, in my marriage, is his money is our money and my money is my money. That doesn't mean that my money never gets contributed to the household, because it's my household too. You know, that doesn't mean that I never spend money on myself, right? To like invest in things that are important to me, right? It doesn't mean any of that. It doesn't mean I'm hoarding like years and years and years worth of like salary, right? While my husband's like over here without a penny to his name. Like, that's not what it means. And this is what I talk about too with like men and women and the whole like misunderstanding of dominance and submission. This is why I genuinely think that like men should submit to women, because we don't see things the same way as y'all. And so y'all are afraid of like all of this, like, oh, woman's going to take advantage of me and like my money. Your money is safer with a woman, like statistically, even women who work on like Wall Street and stuff like that, they produce better returns on the investments. Literally, like, they're better at the stock market. So your money is anyway safer with a woman. Let her invest it for you. Let her do whatever she wants with it. Because, like, again, statistically, it's been proven women are better with money. Women actually invest their money into things that matter. And did you guys know that, like, there's 160,000 men in the U.S., and 80,000 of them, 80,000 are subscribed to OnlyFans. you're giving your money to women anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, Marina says, I think we should be making decisions that make sense for our individual relationships / situations. And I'm not here to stop anybody from being a pick-me. If you want to be a pick-me, that is your right as an American. I realize that, like, as another woman, I can only present to you the arguments and then you can make your own decision. Like, yeah, I agree. You should definitely make, arrangements that work for you. I'm not here to stop you. I'm just here to, like, lay out my case. Kelly says it's nearly impossible to find a man that truly sympathizes with feminism. And that's exactly why this is a bad faith argument, right? Because most men will be like, oh, feminism ruined society and, like, feminism ruined this and ruined that and all these blue-haired feminists and da-da-da. But when it comes to 50-50, they're like, feminism, yes, that's feminism. You women, you have to do feminism now because that's feminism. Man, fuck you. Like, I'm not doing that. Men only love feminism when it comes to, like, the sexual liberation movement and 50-50 relationships. And I'm sorry, it's just, like, too many women are falling for this. Like, this is not a value proposition for you. It's really not. And again, men will never be the prize. Like, men lower, for the most part, lower your standard of living, your, like, career success expectations. They put you at risk of pregnancy. They put you at risk of, like, domestic violence. A pregnant woman's statistical biggest danger is the man who got her pregnant. So, like, you can't argue with the stats. Like, that just is what it is. Yep, RB, exactly. Men will abandon you and your kids. That's why it's 100-0. Exactly. Because y'all have the option. It's also, like, just statistically, like, investment-wise, it's like a woman can just invest in herself now. You know what I mean? Like, women have always been forced to invest in men, and it's like, men didn't used to require money from women to do that, and now they do. They're like, no, if you want to invest in me and you want to, like, wipe my pee off from around the toilet and you want to wash my socks and my skid marks and my underwear, then you're going to have to, what do you bring to the table? And it's like, man, you haven't even, like, figured out how to wipe up a ketchup spill. You know what I mean? Like, you men on a large scale, if I squirt some ketchup on the table and hand you a paper towel, you will not know how to wipe up a ketchup spill. Like, we literally saw physical evidence of this on TikTok like 2 years ago. And in my mind, men have never recovered from that. Like, based on that alone, like, I'm not splitting no fucking bills with anybody. Y'all are fighting for your life in these comments. Look, go find you a woman who's going to pay 50-50 with you. I don't know why you're arguing with me. Like, 50-50 is only good when both parties provide and do domestic labor equally. Sure, 50-50 will also only be good once men figure out how to do 50% of a pregnancy and 50% of, like, taking on that risk and 50% of birthing a baby and 50% of breastfeeding. Once y'all figure that out, then we're good. Best case scenario, you can go 50-50 with the trans man if you're a straight woman. Yeah, exactly, corporate nerd. That's what I'm talking about. The men who are going to ask you to go 50-50 are bad with money. Like, that's all that tells you, right? When I've let a man live with me splitting the bills, I ended up paying for majority of necessities. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Is like, you're just going to end up getting swindled out of your money. These men are swindlers. They're not here in good faith. They know they don't need money. They know, I'm sorry, men know they don't need money. The only thing that men need money for is to like attract women or have like power on a massive scale, which most men will never have. So it's like when a man is like withholding his like 60K salary from you and he's like, oh, I'll pay like 50% of the bills. Like, okay, then you might as well not be here. Like, what are you going to do here? Pay 50% of the bills and what else? I'm sorry, like literally chime in. He's going to pay 50% of the bills and what else? Statistically. Okay, so now Dal 2K says, I need money to pay for my multiple sclerosis treatment. So that's what I'm talking about. These are the kind of issues we're not acknowledging when we talk about 50-50 relationships. Because presumably you're saying, and that's why a woman should pay 50% of my bills. Whereas I'm saying we can't move past that until we address the fact that we don't have universal health care, right? Because a woman, if you live with a woman and it's kind of like men can only have empathy for themselves, I swear to God. Because what is a woman supposed to do when you, with your multiple sclerosis treatment or whatever, like you guys are like struggling to get by, she's paying 50% of the bills, you're paying 50% of the bills, and then you're not being careful and you get her pregnant and you're completely responsible for that. Are you like avoiding that kind of SMEX? Like, are you avoiding PIV? Are you like, what are you doing to protect her from the equivalent of like that kind of thing where she's going to be basically disabled for 9 months? She's going to be like throwing up. She might have HG. She might have to be on bed rest. She might have to quit her job. Like I said, a lot of women's jobs don't require after pregnancy. And then, you know, this is where men will be like all about healthcare. Oh, we'll get a smortion. Like, okay, what if you're in a red state? You can't. Men didn't come out for your rights to do that. And now those same men want to be like, oh, well, 50-50. No, it's not 50-50. It's not 50-50 until everybody has universal health care, until smortion is a free and available and accessible to everybody. And even then, if you ever plan on getting that woman pregnant, let me ask y'all a question, especially the women that are like fighting for their fucking life, defending like 50-50, like men. Let me ask you a question. What do you think would be the conditions for men to have a relationship if women could get men pregnant? What do you think the bare minimum that a man would require for that kind of access to his body that can be just randomly impregnated? When he forgets to take his birth control or when you stealth him without a condom. What, seriously, like, men, go ahead, please. All the little trolls that were in here literal seconds ago, please tell me what you would require of a woman to have that kind of access to your body if you could get pregnant. Would you ever pay 50-50 bills? Would you ever do that? Or would you at that point be like, you know what? If I'm paying 50% of the bills, I might as well get a male roommate who can't get me pregnant. Go ahead. Sound off in the comments. Don't forget to take your birth control, ladies. That is so funny. Yeah, not 50-50 till I have more rights than a fetus. Preach. Preach. Kelly says, stop putting yourself in that situation. Don't have kids or get married. This is a choice, you know. So I'm actually specifically talking to people who want to be in relationships. So you can make that argument, but these are people who want to be in relationships and presumably will get into a relationship regardless of what you think, Kelly. So, you know, I know there's the 4B movement, but that's kind of the thing, is like people have to decide to join that movement. And there's a lot of people that don't want to. And I believe that, like, it's not bad to want to have a relationship with another person. And I do want to live in a world where it's possible for us to have, you know, equitable relationships that come as close to equal as possible while still acknowledging the, like, disproportionate risks that we take. That's all. That's all I want. Because I want that to exist in a world where, like, reparations have been made, like, all this and that. And I still think that if women are going to be solely responsible for pregnancy, childbearing, all of that, we have to still take that into account. That's all. Because men do not have, like, that's the kind of problem we really can't, like, get around, is, like, how are men going to address that in a 50-50 relationship? Again, men, please chime in. How much, what would it take? How much would a woman have to bring in? Or how much, you know, would you charge even for a one-time pregnancy, delivery, breastfeeding, and most of the parenting? How much would you charge? And your career never recovering after said event. Hark the Harlot, exactly. Imagine how quickly the birth rate would plummet. Even worse if a single man gave birth. That's what I'm talking about. A single cis man. Yeah. I know everyone's like, just say you're a misandrist. What's your solution? My solution is that women should not be forced into 50-50 relationships with, like, this societal guilt of, like, well, don't you want to be equal? We can talk about being equal, like we said, when we have more rights than a fetus, and when men figure out how to do 50%, how to take on 50% risk of a pregnancy. That's when we can talk about it. And all the, like, outcomes of that. When we're doing that equally, we can talk about equal money. Also, when men stop hoarding resources, we can talk about, you don't need a certain amount of like, you know what I mean? Come on. People are talking about stay-at-home dads. I'm not talking about stay-at-home dads. I'm not talking about stay-at-home dads. That's a separate and different issue. Because once again, a woman's career, even if she has a stay-at-home dad, is still going to hit that, like, point where it can't recover, right? It's going to hit that point of, like, there's going to be a dip because you had to take 6 weeks off of work. Maybe longer, depending on how much of, like, a debilitating, disabling event your birth was. Men have no sympathy, no empathy for that. They're like, well, just be a stay-at-home dad. Again, you didn't pop out the baby. You don't now have a changed body forever, right? And yeah, for most men, being a stay-at-home dad sounds really fun because they have no idea what goes into it. And then also on top of that, most stay-at-home dads, like, a lot of women don't want a stay-at-home dad because men don't do as good of a job, because there's no pressure on them like, from the society to do a good job. So nobody is ever like, oh, you didn't cut the sandwich into, like, a star shape. Oh, you didn't do your kid's hair. Like, whatever. Like, I've even seen videos of, like, people praising men for a man figuring out that he can hold his daughter's hair up, you know, like this, like straight up, like a Cindy Lou Who situation. And then he can make her spin around until the hair coils itself into a bun. And then all he has to do is like put a rubber band around it and make like this ugly little bun. And people were like, oh my gosh, like what a man, what a man, what a man. Like, this is amazing. I'm like, you literally still outsourced most of that bun making to your child. Like, you're disgusting. I'm sorry. I have no empathy for men who want to be stay-at-home dads. Like, oh, you're just going to figure out how to parentify your own children, like, even worse than they're already, like, do you know what I mean? Because even as much as, like, I've seen mothers parentify children, I have never seen a woman have the audacity to hold her child's hand in a fist and then make the child spin around and make her own bun. Like, I'm sorry. And she would never be praised for that either. So, and everybody's in here just willfully misunderstanding it. Like, I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Nicole, X wouldn't even take care of our dogs when he didn't have a job and I was working 2 jobs. Like, you men always say, like, oh, I'll be a stay-at-home dad, but you don't realize that being a stay-at-home parent is humbling as fuck, that nobody's gonna say thank you, that kids are a never-ending source of, like, problems and and I'm not saying that in a bad way. I used to be a teacher, so I know that kids are like awesome and I genuinely love kids, but I'm just telling you, it never ends with the kids. Like, no matter, like, even like how old they get, it's just different worries that you're gonna have about them and like concerning them. So it's not really a thing where it just ever stops. And I think like men have been made so soft by the 9 to 5 work life that they've given themselves. Like, the real princess treatment is in the fact that men only have ever had to work like 8 to 10 hours a day, while women have always had to work 24/7. And the jobs that women have typically been really grueling, really hard, really underpaid, and have gotten them no closer to like the kind of recognition that men get in society for working, whereas men only ever have to do the bare minimum when it comes to being a parent, and society praises them more than women. Like, we're not recognizing those kinds of things when we talk about like, oh, men could just be a stay-at-home dad. What do you have to say to that? Like, absolutely nothing. I wouldn't trust a man to be a stay-at-home dad. Y'all don't know what hard work is. Y'all don't know what it's like. Y'all have been made soft by the simulated environment that you created for yourself in order to avoid any shred of responsibility being placed on you. I don't know what to tell you. Exactly, Madeline. Recently, a father was watching his child in newborn. 20 minutes after the mom left, the child drowned. And the man was literally like, his excuse was, I went inside to play some video games. Like, what's the big deal? Under the jail. Under the jail. Yeah, he was sports betting, exactly. A lot of people are asking about like my labor split at home. I've covered that like very extensively, so I urge you to like go back and check in on that. How much should stay-at-home dads pay women? That's a great question. How much do you think a man would charge you to birth a baby? Like, if the man had to birth the baby, the man, right? And you as a woman were like, bro, I really want a baby. Like, I want a baby so bad. How much do you think a man would charge you to carry a baby, to get pregnant, carry a baby for 9 months, push it out, breastfeed it, etc.? How much do you think? And then that's the price. Just saying. Y'all are acting like this is the hardest thing like to understand. It's not that hard. My man does better with domestic labor than I do. Same. And that's great. I love that for you, as he should. And he should still pay all the bills. I don't understand. Men need to catch up. Like, men don't understand also, like, that this is holding back their progress. Like, being in a 50-50 relationship is princess treatment for a man. It literally is. Like the 9 to 5 princess treatment. Yeah, Sierra, someone in here said being a stay-at-home dad was easy. Like, brother, that's not good. Exactly. It shouldn't be easy. The fact that you say, like, easy is already, like, concerning. Yeah, vacuum cleaner, ponytail. That's what I'm saying. Like, men will go to such lengths to avoid any actual effort. Yes, it's giving Tom Scavo and same. If he has no haters, we are both unalived because, yeah, that man is diabolical. Yep, my ex-husband was a stay-at-home dad until I found out he was taking our son on substance runs. Whitney says, curious how discriminating against men ends with your stated goal. I'm not discriminating against men. I'm using the statistics that we have as a society. I'm using the evidence that we have as a society to make conclusions about men. There are certain conclusions we can make about men and women based on scientific data and statistics. So I'm not discriminating against men. If it sounds like I'm discriminating, it's because we should all be a lot more concerned about how lopsided those statistics are and about how much less we expect of men on a general, like, in like our general day-to-day life than we do women. Yeah, men don't worry about the children like the women do. Doing to men what you're complaining about doesn't fix anything. Whitney, I'm starting to question that you're really a woman, but in case you are, like I said, I will answer the questions in good faith. We are by no means doing to men what we're complaining about. But we're complaining about having our rights taken away. There's no state in which a man has different rights to his body than a woman. Like, a man can go to any state in America, almost like any country in the world, and he has full rights to his own body. A woman can't do that. So we're not doing that to men. We're not unaliving them. We're not responsible for 92% of all violent crime. We are not their biggest threat when they're pregnant. You know what I mean? So we're not doing the same thing at all. We're just calling out that it wouldn't be fair for us to act like 50-50 is the equitable solution to the problems that we're facing in the world. Again, problems that men do not give a shit about, right? There was a man in here earlier. I don't see you on an oil rig. Do you know why that is? John, or whatever your name was. Do you know why that is? That's because y'all harass women that go to work on oil rigs. That's because, like, statistically, the least safe place for a woman to be is in a male-dominated field. Because y'all view that as a threat to your masculinity, and then you try to bully the women out of it. And that's why I will never talk about 50-50 with men. Because even like when women do try to have equality with men, men get threatened by that. They want to hoard certain things to themselves. Right. Yep. Gravestone. DV increases around football season. That's disgusting. You think anyone can expect a man to possess empathy for women? Thank you, Todd Hunter. Yeah, getting married in itself is princess treatment for a man. Couldn't agree more. Hey, ignorance won't save you. Yeah, everyone says pick better men, and like nobody says that to men. Nobody says pick better women when men are like, "Oh my gosh, like she took the kids and she took half the house and she took half my salary and like half my savings." Nobody says that to men, like, "Oh, well, you should have picked better." But when a woman is left like destitute with like several children, broke without any money, without any job prospects because her husband wanted to sleep with like somebody younger and then left her for a younger bang maid, like no, everyone's like, "Oh, well, you should have picked better." The onus always ends up back on women, especially by like other feminists, which is what bums me out a lot about this whole like 50-50 is like very feminist, like, and if it's not 50-50, then you should have chose better. And there are men out there that will do half the housework and da 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 da. And it's like, so again, instead of like holding men to a higher standard as a society and being like, hey, why is it that we expect women to go to work, do all this stuff, pay 50-50 in a relationship, and we will literally watch men not be physically able to clean up a ketchup spill with a paper towel? And we'll be like, that's just the boys, that's just what being with a man is like. And we're like, that's funny. We're like, oh, he packed like dog food for lunch. That's funny. You don't know our relationship. Like, what's 50-50 about that? If a woman packed her husband dog food for lunch, let's not pretend like we would have the same kind of like, reaction to it as like, well, it's just funny. Like, it would be disrespectful. It would be like, why would she do that? She's such a bitch. Like, da da da. In fact, there would probably be like a lot of violent rhetoric around that. Caroline says, Ruby Frank was a bad mom too, but that doesn't mean every woman is bad. So it's the same for men. Let's do a quick little thought experiment. Or if you want, you can make it a physical experiment. I don't really have the means to do that, but you can. Why don't you, Caroline, look up crimes committed by men and then crimes committed by women? And we put those two things in like two piles. And then we can go from there. Yeah? Okay. Okay, so it is 100% eugenics, punishing people of a certain wealth level. Please don't block me. I fuck with you. I fuck with you too. And I think that's exactly what we're failing to address when we talk about 50-50 relationships. Because when you say like, oh, it's eugenics to say that like people who can't afford kids shouldn't be having kids. Some of us say that because it like hurts the kids. Like growing up in poverty is really, really bad for you. And so, but instead of making 50-50 the solution to that, because that still gives a man as much power over you as if he was doing 100 and you were doing 0. Do you know what I mean? Still gives a man just as much power because he can always withdraw that 50%. And if you've built your lifestyle around that, like being part of it, that will hurt you. Instead of that, we should just, because the government is so worried about the birth rate dropping, it's kind of like, what are they going to do about it? Like that's not up to us to solve that problem. It's up to all of us to decide, like, what do we owe each other? Do we want children growing up in poverty? And if not, then how can we fix that without resorting to the eugenics of like, yeah, only rich people should have kids? Because I totally agree with you. But it's like, what are these children? What is the birth rate worth to the government? right? Because they have all this money when it comes to like bailing out billionaires. They have all this money when it comes to giving billionaires subsidies. But when it comes to saying like, oh, well, y'all want us to have kids, but you're paying $7 an hour. And if you, and that's the minimum wage. Like if you could pay less, you would. And so we're not really questioning that. We're only questioning, again, women for not wanting to go 50-50 when men can't go 50-50 on having a kid, when men can't go 50-50 on being oppressed in society the same way that you are being oppressed. Like that, those to me are like the structural problems that we're failing to address when we talk about how 50-50 relationships are the ultimate equity or equality, because they're not. Mm-hmm. Yeah, men also try to bully women out of politics. They can't maintain the corruption if we're there. I know. Imagine if like women were the majority in government, like we wouldn't even be having this conversation because we would have those social safety nets and like methods of reparation way more easily available and like way more like it would be way less of like a tough sell the way that it is right now. Because again, men don't have to deal with what we deal with. Therefore, they don't have empathy towards us. Therefore, they say shit like 50-50. What do you bring to the table? Da 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 da. That's fine. I love my mods. Thank you so much. 50-50 makes sense if you're in a relationship that is strained. People need to be a team with their partner. I think people need to think a little bit harder about the fact that a single person does not make enough to live on their own. And that's why like most people are hyping up 50-50 relationships. And so again, I think that we are doing ourselves a disservice as far as social progress goes when we talk about, well, most people would be too poor to even be in a relationship or even have kids if they weren't going 50-50. Okay. That's bootlicking to me, but okay. I don't want to lick any boots. I know, men saying they're alphas and yet expect 50-50 is the most hilarious thing. Yeah. Garden Girl, yes, I did read that. Sorry, it's not like approving your comment, but... Yeah, and just for the record, like all the men being like, duh, 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 this doesn't make any sense and like, whatever. Once again, please put in the chat a number, the number of money that you would require for a woman to use your body to pump a liquid into you. Then that stuff gets you pregnant. Your belly starts to grow. Your organs are all over the place. You're like throwing up. You're tired. Your brain is foggy. You have like pains. You've opened yourself up to like a litany of things that could go wrong, like high blood pressure, gestational diabetes, like You know already your body's never going to be the same. You have trouble sleeping at night. Like, I've never been pregnant, so I'm sure there's like 1,000 different symptoms that I'm missing. Please put a number in the chat of what it would take for you to go through all that. And then at the end of it, just in case y'all didn't know, the cervix, a normal cervical opening is about the size of like a pee hole. The same kind that men have, right? At the tip of your pee-pee, you have a pee hole. Well, that's the size of a woman's cervix, which is the opening to the uterus, like on a day-to-day basis. And then right before she's about to give birth, that little hole, right, expands out to only like, I don't know, something like this big or whatever. And then she's got to push a head, a human head, followed by 2 human shoulders out through that hole. And a lot of the times, the tissue rips even further, right? Because something's coming out that's bigger than the hole. Okay? and whatever state that leaves her reproductive system in, that's just like what she has to live with. So please tell me an actual number that it would take. I'm still not seeing it. I want to see the number of dollars from any one of you. What number of dollars would you require to go through that? I have a feeling I'll be waiting for a while. So go ahead. Not seeing a single number. Couldn't pay me. Exactly. No one put a number. I know. That's because they're lying to y'all. That's what I'm saying. It's like, this is not a good argument. This is not a good faith argument. All of these men are in here typing and leaving comments, except for when I ask them to do one simple thing. I say, what number of dollars would you require to go through the process of being impregnated, gestating a baby, and then pushing that baby out? Crickets. Absolute crickets every single time. Okay, so Leah says, what about infertile women? So, okay, let me ask you a question. And this is also a question to the men. What is a year of your life worth? So, like, even an infertile woman, and not like even an infertile woman still benefits a man even with just her presence. She will be the reason that he gets paid more throughout his life, even if they get divorced. She will be the reason that he lives longer. She'll be the reason that he goes to the doctor. She'll be the reason probably for several promotions, and like she'll encourage him to apply for all of that throughout his career. What is that worth to you? What's a year of your life worth to you? Women benefit men no matter what, even if it's not by being fertile. Like, I don't benefit my husband by being fertile because I'm not having kids. And so, like, but he still pays 100% of the bills. Still not seeing numbers. I'm still not seeing numbers. If you want to argue, you're going to have to give me a number. Well, see, just messing around says guys don't give birth, women do, so ask women. Well, I did, but y'all don't like the answer. You don't like the answer when women don't want to go 50-50 because y'all can't take on the childbearing and stuff like that. Yeah, thank you, the Capricorn. At least one honest man in the chat, 200K. Yeah. Yeah, someone said 3,000 a month. Yeah, totally. 10 grand, let me tell you about 10 grand. So 10 grand tells me that you probably don't live in America. Because in America, 10 grand would maybe cover your unproblematic birth. Like, plain and simple, if you didn't have insurance. So, and most men don't even want to talk about the fact that, like, yeah, with the midwife, exactly. Yep. Men will beg you for a baby, claim 50-50 responsibility, then say, I'm too tired to deal with a baby. That's the other thing about men is, like, when they don't want to do something, they just won't do it because they're not natural born, like, leaders. They don't think like that. They don't think in leadership terms. So when you actually expect them to come through on what they promise, they won't. They don't actually hold themselves responsible to that. Like, a woman was talking about she wanted to go to a book club for like 2 hours, and her husband threw a huge fit about watching the baby, made her come home early, like just kept calling her like, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. Made her come home early, and when she came home, he had earplugs in and the baby was screaming by itself in a crib. Like, we can't even have this conversation because men are not even ready to be a stay-at-home dad for like even an hour. It's disgusting. And they want all of this and more. They want a woman's presence. They want a woman's reproductive labor. They want a woman's emotional labor. But they don't want to bring any of that to the table. They don't want to figure out how to have a baby. They don't want to figure out how to birth a baby. They don't want to do any of that. They don't want to be responsible for birth control. They want you to be responsible for that. They don't want to be responsible for making money. They don't want to be responsible for paying the bills. They don't want any of that. But when it comes to women, they're like, well, what do you bring to the table? What table? There is no table. You're not, you know what I mean? Like, as a man, like, for you to be like, really ask a woman, what do you bring to the table? There would have to be a table. Most men can't even afford to build a table and don't know how to build a table and wouldn't be able to build a table without a woman. You know, somebody said earlier, like, what was the actual comment? Let's see. Oh, precious things. The men are crying in the comments because they're getting called out. That's what I'm talking about. Krista, spot on. The answer is our entire history. Laws forcing us to mate with them because they don't want to admit this. Exactly. Everything in life cannot be monetized. I would say, like, tell that to your fellow men. Oh, dang. I think that comment is gone now. Exactly, benign Cruella. Infertile woman here. My husband pays for everything and insists I keep any money I make. Exactly, just because he's a good man. It's like when they get it, they get it. You don't have to teach the men who are like natural born leaders or like empathetic people this. You don't have to teach them this. Anthony says, I want to be a stay-at-home trophy husband. What are your qualifications? Yeah, men monetized water and food, and now all of a sudden they're like, well, not everything can be monetized. I don't know, you tell me. Like, women have always done it that way, by the way. Women are the people that invented, like, community mutual aid. Like, women know this. Women know not everything has to be monetized. But since men insist on that, this is just like our way of mirroring back what we're getting. You know what I mean? I was gonna actually make a whole video talking about this, about how like there's been certain the women that men hate the most have figured out how to mirror men back to them. It's the gold diggers, it's the selfish women, it's the like, you know, the women that lean into the whole like I'm just a girl and like, yeah, you have to open my door, you have to pay for everything, like whatever. It's the women that lean into the stereotypes that men create for us. That's the women that men hate the most. So, yeah, husband and trophy are contradictory. Exactly. Like, what kind of a trophy are you if you take years off a woman's life? What kind of a trophy are you if, like, most of the time when women leave you alone with the baby, the baby gets hurt, like, or the baby is like being neglected, is being like taken care of, like very half-assedly. You're not a prize. You're not a trophy. Like, you're in your princess era. Thoughts on willing to learn men? I would say that that's like a really low standard for when you talk about, yeah. So like Tammy just said exactly what I'm trying to say. Like the top tier man is like an average woman. So like to me, if a man is like, oh, I'm willing to learn, it's like, that's great. But like, okay, that's like nothing. There's no practical benefit of that to me as a woman. Like, okay, you, great. You know what I mean? Like, and what do you think, why do you think that is? Why do you think statistically women or whatever are abuse and neglect children more than men? It's because men don't take care of children. So statistically, yeah, that would make sense. That's because like 1% of men actually deals with their kids. So, and also like that's what I mean. Like, yeah, same reason most stair accidents happen on the stairs. Exactly. Like, you guys are funny. It's like you act like you invented science and data, and then when it comes time to like actually interpreting it, you are unable. It like does not add up to you. Yes, Ace of Spades, that's exactly it. Because you have to look at the statistics side by side, right? So if you look at statistics that say, oh, more women abuse children or neglect children than men do, and then you look at the other set of statistics that says most men are not in their children's life, how does that not make sense to you? That makes perfect sense. Nice, let them eat cake. Yeah, I know. It's because feminism is like presented to us like let them eat cake says, I'm a feminist and still this has never occurred to me. That's because feminism has been presented to us in a vacuum. You know, like Kamala Harris said, you don't fall out of a coconut tree every morning. There's like so much that came before you and so much that will come after you that you can't pretend like you fall out of a fucking coconut tree every morning. You can't act like sexual liberation is the same thing that it is for men, for women. You can't act like 50-50 is the same thing that it is for men as it is for women, because those things do not exist in a vacuum. They exist in the context of everything. And women are putting themselves a lot more at risk to be in relationships with men. Not only that, when men move about the world, the response to them is different than women. So all of that has to be taken into account. I agree, Angelic. I think being a gold digger is the only way to properly respond to the 2025 patriarchal system. That's why I say that's why men hate us for speaking out on this. That's why men hate Shira 7. There was a comment I wanted to respond to. Hold on. Okay, so BOGO, really quick. Trad relationships hold back social progress. We're not talking about trad relationships. We're talking about a woman making her own money, but just still not paying the bills. That's progress. Because men have always been able to do the bare minimum. Again, they've been able to like bring home a salary that doesn't even cover, like, women and children have had to like starve because men will like gamble money away. Like they don't even bring all their money home, right? And so that was one of those things where it was like, yeah, a man pays like 100% or whatever, but a woman does 1,000% in return. A woman does what no man would be willing to do, as evidenced by the men in this live. When I asked what would it take for you to have a baby, most men couldn't even picture it enough to like come up with a number. We didn't get like any numbers in the comments except for like 200K, 3K a month, 100K for every year that the child, until the child is 18, etc. Like the numbers were big, right? So if that's the case, then like women should not be going 50-50. Because men understand it real quick when it comes to them, when it comes to how much would it take for you to do this. Okay, I'm just trying to find the comment. Thanks so much, y'all. Thank you for the gifts. I really appreciate that. I think men need to have more self-respect and not be considered someone else's ATM. Yeah, just be on your own. Like, men don't understand either that this is like a supply demand issue. Like, women don't want to go 50-50 with y'all. It's a supply and demand thing. Either bring more to the table or give women money. Like, again, y'all were the ones that monetized everything, so... Yeah, money in a man's hands is just like a disaster waiting to happen to begin with. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I used to feel the need to pay my portion to prove my independence. Like, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Yep, women live longer when they don't have kids. Women take the bigger risk when getting married. Absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, I also think that, like, man, where was that comment? Oh, there you go. Do you even know what men value in a relationship? Men value unchallenged power in a relationship. And that's why y'all want to deprive women of resources in any way that you can, right? So before, you used to deprive women of resources by saying, oh, you can't go to work, I'll just provide for you, etc. Now you want to deprive women of resources by saying, now that you go to work, you have to give me half of your money. It's always been about depriving women of resources for your own good, to be a parasite. And I agree, women have always had to work. I'm just saying for money. Kelly says, so you have a husband that understands and supports this? No, LOL. Let's not be hypocritical. Who wants to tell Kelly? Who wants to tell Kelly that my husband is at work right now and that he's going to pay all the bills this month? My husband of 13 years, who's always done that. I live by example. Leave it to a woman to tell men what they want. Well, what do men want? Y'all want submissive women. You want to have, like, pretend power over women. In fact, like, even when you say you want submissive women, like, that's so sad to me and so, like, it's just pathetic on a different level because when you have to ask for submission, that's already, like, the most pathetic sign that you're not a leader to begin with. So, yup. Yeah, there's so many women in the comments. Like, if y'all need to, if y'all need any, like, social proof of this, there's, like, 200 or so people in this live, and there's, like, been 20 women out of those people that are like, yeah, my husband's been paying the bills for, like, 20 years. How do you give back to him? Oh my God, y'all are so pressed. What if I didn't? Like, I'm sure I do, and I'm sure he tells me all the time how I give back to him. But what if I didn't? Like, y'all realize that most men don't give a... Like, most men, if being with a woman would not out proportionately out benefit them, if being with a woman did not disproportionately out benefit most men would not be with women. And that's what we're seeing. Like, men are only in it for themselves. That's why they're like, there was passport bros in the comments earlier talking about, oh yeah, men, you need to, oh, I think that's so cute. You men need to go overseas and you need to find you a woman that will like do all this for $40 a month. That's what I'm talking about. Men don't want 50-50 relationships. Like I said, that only counts when it comes to money. But other than that, men want like disproportionately relationships to affect them. They want to be in a relationship where basically you're a submissive provider and you still plan his entire life. You take care of all the kids. You do everything around the house. You go to work. You bring home, 50% of your paycheck. And then, if the kids want or need anything extra, you're probably going to have to cover that. If you guys get in trouble with bills or whatever, he's going to be like, well, I don't have it. Pull out of your savings. Like, that's what men want. If it's not that, then they want to bring home $60K and juice you for all the labor of like what would cost if you were to employ those people, like everyone to do everything that like a stay-at-home wife and mother does. It would cost you 10 times over that, right? But men would just want to be like, well, I pay the bills around here and you have a roof over your head. And then when women say, okay, well, I can go get a job and I can put my own roof over my own head, then men are like, give me half of that money. For what? For what? What are you going to do with it? Don't be crazy. Y'all don't deserve money. You've been hoarding it for years and years and years, and most of y'all are still broke because you won't deal with the fact that like social progress depends on like equality and actual equity. You'll rather just live with a billionaire's dick in your mouth. I'm just saying. Hi, a friend of mine explained to me that a man paying everything is patriarchy feeding patriarchy. Was your friend a man, by chance? Because I don't think that's feeding patriarchy. I think that is like men's rightful consequence for creating the patriarchy. And actually the only way to like balance that out is for you as a woman to have your own money that you don't share with a man. It's time for women to hoard resources away from men. That's all I'm saying. They've hoarded resources away from us for thousands of years. Even access of those resources like school, education, all that kind of stuff. They have kept us forcefully away from that. I think it's time we do the same thing back. Hasn't even been 100 years since women could open a bank account. Exactly. Yep. So I hope that helps, Tata, because I hate that argument. It's not patriarchy feeding patriarchy. It's actually just women responding to the patriarchy now that we have like a little bit of power to wield in the patriarchy, and men are crashing out. That's what I'm saying. Men have always had that kind of power to withhold resources from women. But then when women do it back, now all of a sudden it's a big deal. Now it's a crime. It's just how it always goes for women. I'm just saying. Why the vocal fry? I've been on here for too long. Giving a man the power to feed you also gives him the power to starve you. You have the power to feed yourself as a woman if you live in America. And that's the most important power you will have. So I would never advocate for women giving a man the power to feed them. I would advocate for women taking all of a man's money and still having their own money. That's fair. Thank you, Lila. The friend is a woman. Yeah, she sounds like a pick-me. She sounds very male-centered. Like, you're definitely not feeding the patriarchy. Yes, Sebastian, I am. I'm in a marriage of 13 years. It's gonna be 14 later this month. And bills are paid. My money's in my own account. My husband does not want to even know how much money I make, so... I love how the men are like, this is so toxic. Like, again, as if taking our rights away is not toxic. As if literally creating systems of education and then barring women from them is not toxic. As if, like, the violence rate and crime rate that men exhibit every single day, that men contribute to every single day, like, that's not toxic. Like, the way that men joke about and talk about women, like, that's not toxic. Y'all can see toxic so easily when women do it. And that's why I love doing it. Because all of a sudden men are like, but that's not fair. But that's not equal. What about men? I don't give a fuck. The same way you never gave a fuck about women, I don't give a fuck about men. What protests did you attend? You know what I mean? What letters have you written to your senators about women's bodies, about women's rights to their bodies, about women's right to health care, about women's right to, like, you know what I mean, financial assistance if they get, you know, impregnated by a man who then doesn't pay child support? Where were you? Where were you? All that was fair to you? That seemed fair to you because you were on the receiving end of it. So all I have to say to you now is fuck you. Do whatever you want with this information. I'm giving this information to women so that hopefully they can be smarter and so that hopefully they can, like, not overlook the fact that this is such a raw deal for them. That's all I'm doing. You see toxicity in very interesting places and you fail to see it absolutely anywhere else. So all I have to say to that, once again, is fuck you. I don't care. I don't care that you don't think this is fair. I don't care that you can't afford this. I don't care that you then some of us won't get to be in a relationship. That's the point. A lot of women didn't want to be a lot of women didn't want to be in a relationships with y'all to begin with. They were forced into it. Because y'all think that we're just as desperate as you. We're only desperate without resources. And 50-50 relationships is just another way for women to be desperate. And I don't like that. I don't think women should be that desperate. Thank you, Sierra. Yeah, Lily, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Like, I've been in a 50-50 relationship and it's horrible. That's what most women have found. So, I have not read Lauren Southern's memoir. Is that the trad wife that figured out real quick that being a trad wife is not a good deal? Thanks, Jesse. Thank you, Rosa. Yeah. A lot of older women were straight up brainwashed and like bullied by society to never talk about this. Prismatic Peach says, I think I should have stopped my 50% when he stopped being intimate. Not sure what that means, but sure, if that is something that you are like very dead set on, that's fine. Gravestone says, tips on finding a provider that isn't misogynistic. You're not looking for a provider. You're looking for an empathetic man who just won't take your money because he knows that, like, in this world, like, he should be paying the bills because you didn't fall out of a coconut tree and neither did he. So yeah, all the women in here are literally saying, like, if a man's asking you to do 50-50, get a roommate instead. Like, I tried 50-50, never again. And the men are still not getting it. How is 50-50 horrible? It's not horrible to you, Chris, because you don't take on the risks. Because you're not the one getting screwed over in that deal. That's why it's not horrible to you. But when you actually, once again, if you actually tried being empathetic towards women and, like, what they're expected to do in relationships, then you would know why it's fucking horrible. How would you recommend a woman to get out of a relationship when they're financially stuck? Well, I would first and foremost tell you not to go 50-50, because then you are financially stuck. I would tell you to save up your money. And then you can always get out of a relationship. You can always, you know what I mean? When you have enough money saved up, you don't have to worry about going to a shelter first. You know, you don't have to worry about, oh, like, now I have to find an apartment, like, whatever. You can give them, like, 6 months rent up front. You know, you can, even if you don't have, like, a rental history or whatever, you can just show them your bank account and they'll be like, okay, no worries, approved, come on through. Like, that's what I'm talking about. That's why women need to have their own money, because men more often than not will fucking take advantage of you and in a 50-50 relationship, and it will still leave you like desolate. How long have I been in a relationship? I've been married for 13 years. Not to a loser. So what social progress are we hoping to achieve? That's a great question, Colin. And that's what exactly what have been addressing in this live. So you can find it on YouTube, because I'm honestly getting really fucking tired. So I'm going to hop off of here soon. But and then some of you are just dense. Like, what are the risks for women in relationships that doesn't apply to men? I'm going to need you to figure that one out on your own. But yeah, the social progress that we're hoping to achieve is actual equality for everybody, so that we can even begin talking about like 50-50 relationships on a massive scale. The kind of social progress that I'm talking about would involve like ending the violence against women by men specifically. It would involve seeing like social progress, I think, would involve seeing just a lot less violence committed in general. Like, that would be progress if we could go outside and not worry about getting like raped or assaulted or, you know, whatever, men included in that, by the way. And again, you know, men will like line up behind Daddy Trump when he's like, we got to take control of these like cities and there's too much violence and all that. But when women talk about men's violence, it's like falling on deaf ears. So that's part of it. The other part of it is we would figure out like the need for reparations, and we would actually pay those out accordingly. So that way there's not that question of like, oh, well, since women have been disadvantaged, does that mean that white women have to pay for black men, vice versa? We would have those reparations in place, and that would make it a lot easier for people to be more generous with their resources. Also, and the fact that so many people talk about 50-50 relationships being the answer to poverty is very concerning. That is called the two-income trap. It's a book by Elizabeth Warren. You should read it because that's how the capitalists are taking advantage of all of us. You should be able to afford to live on your own. You should even be able to afford to take care of a child on your own, right? The social progress that I'm also hoping to achieve is like universal healthcare. When we talk about women having access to healthcare for their body, right? That's one part of it. Equal research for women and men so that women don't have to take, all the responsibility on of birth control that has a list of side effects that's literally this long. What else? Like, you know what I mean? It's a lot. It's a lot that we can't address if we just jump to 50-50 relationships and pretend like things are equal across the board, right? I want there to be equal beauty standards for men and women. And I don't want it to involve women being held to the standard of you can't wear makeup because you're ruining it for other women. I don't want that. I think social progress would look like anybody that wants to wear makeup wears makeup and more men wear makeup. I think that's progress. It's course correction. We need to course correct instead of putting a Band-Aid on the issue and being like, oh, well, you guys are classist and it's actually like eugenics to say this. It's like, no, it's eugenics. The fact that poor people can't afford to even like be in a relationship or live on their own or have children, that's eugenics, okay? Us saying that maybe you shouldn't bring children into poverty if that is like the only thing that you can see as an available path. That's not eugenics. That's common sense. Eugenics is paying people $7.25 an hour and then guilting them about the birth rate dropping. That's eugenics. Okay. So social progress would be men having empathy for women and everything that women go through when they put their bodies at risk for pregnancy so that a man can like nut in them raw or whatever it is, social progress would be us like men not talking about women as if they're objects. Okay. And the only way that a lot of men can like see this is by a woman holding up a mirror being like, oh, okay, you're a provider. Like, you want to have all of this like societal respect, like whatever. Okay, then I'm not doing anything. I'm not contributing anything. Can you still be a provider if I have my own job? Like, what is it going to bother you to be a provider if I make money too? Then you're not really a provider. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. Men hate being faced with a mirror. Men hate being asked the question of, what would you charge a woman to impregnate you, to carry her child, to birth her child, to breastfeed her child? Your body's never going to be the same, for better or for worse. Like, women should be proud of that. Like, that's amazing that your body can do that. But there's no going around the fact that it's never going to be the same. That's what I mean by fucking social progress. Like, you guys are dense and unempathetic. And that's why women don't want to deal with y'all. That's why like 50-50 relationships are not good enough. And I want women to understand that. I'm not making this argument to men. I have given up on men. Like, men are a lost cause to me. I think that like they're a lost cause to themselves. Like, God helps those who help themselves. You know what I mean? When I see men start calling out other men, when I see men doing things that are unpopular by masculine standards, etc., and then we can talk about like what, women can do for men and like how the patriarchy hurts men, etc. I don't give a fuck about that right now because the patriarchy hurts women worse. And women have to actually deal with the consequences of not only their own actions, but of men's actions as well. And I'm not really down with that as a proponent for actual equality. So I hope that helps to answer your question. And with that, I'm gonna hop off of here. Yep, exactly. Oh man, I really do want to respond to some of the comments, y'all, but I'm too tired. I love y'all. I'll post this to YouTube, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. I'll see you next time. Bye. Mwah. Love you back, Angie. Love you back, Krista. Bye, Jesse. Bye, Black Phillip. Thank you so much for modding today. I appreciate you. Thank you, Phosphines, for modding as well. Mwah.